Welcome to the Cricket8 podcast. I'm Jarrod Kimber, and I'm with your favorite internet daddy. It's Rob Barron. We have an emergency podcast. I mean, we're actually going to record exactly at this time anyway, but it's an emergency because Matthew Mott has just been fired as the England white ball coach, or he's stepped down, or he's been managed out. I'm not quite sure. I read 3 different articles with 3 different wordings. Rob, just to start with, what's your first take on Matthew Mott losing the England white ball coaching position?
Good news for England, I think. He's responsible for some amazing quotes. He's not quite Peter Moore's. We didn't look at the data whether that was a real quote or not. I don't know, but I think it was Ward during the World Cup when we just got absolutely murdered by Sri Lanka. Said basically, where did it all go wrong? And the quote was he said, how do you explain the drop off of where England have been and where England are now when we were getting thoroughly smashed by everybody? And his answer was, I don't know. And my absolute favourite quote was when England decided to have a bowl in the searing heat at the Wankhede against South Africa. And he said, the heat was more than we bargained for. Now, I'm no meteorologist or whatever the word is, but it's quite often warm in Mumbai. And you don't have to bowl first. And South Africa got 400 and we were like 100 for 8 in reply. If you remember that game, Atkinson and Wood got like a 50-70 partnership or something. That was really fun. But yeah, just catastrophic decisions when it got to the World Cup. But the thing that Mott did, right, is he put 29 Englishmen on central contracts just before the World Cup. And I think 18 out of those 29 are multi-year contracts. So he's kind of set everything up and then set fire to it and ran away. And yes, all right, whether he's stepped down or been sacked,
He's definitely been sacked, hasn't he?
It's like Anderson retiring. Anderson didn't retire. They told him he had to quit. And, do you want one test or maybe 2 or whatever? They've said, thanks for your time. It wasn't working. It was an interesting appointment. None of us thought it was going to be him, did we, when he was appointed?
No.
He won loads of stuff with the Australian women cricket team, which if me and you managed them, we'd win loads of stuff with them too.
I mean, he's an interesting one. It's funny when Australia lost the 2017 World Cup, I interviewed, we had a press conference. And women's cricket press conferences are very different because women's cricketers don't usually get asked big questions. But this was the best team in the world losing to Harmanpreet at Derby, right? Who would think that a World Cup semi-final would be in Derby to begin with? That should have been the opening line. But I remember just like I was trying to phrase a question about like what happened, and he couldn't answer it. And you look at his career; he's very good when things are going well. Which, of course, when you're coaching the Australian women's team, and then when you take over the white ball team, is fine. I did notice a pattern though. Occasionally, he looked a little bit bewildered in front of the press when things weren't going wrong, or were going wrong. Sorry, I should say. And I don't think he was ever great at that side of the job, right? But the thing he was hired for, Rob, was to keep ticking over a team who were already dual world champions, who were on a roll, and everything just needed to keep going forward. But I mean, I remember I did that podcast with Matt Roller over on my network, and remember Matt Roller and Tim Wigmore wrote the book about the white ball cricket. And I said to Roller, "Do you think they're just going to keep being good at white ball cricket?" And he's like, "Yeah, I really do. I think they put everything in place." And I'm like, because I'm looking at the next crop of English players. And I don't see the next Joss Butler and the next Liam Plunkett and then, the next Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid. Like there was an obvious drop off, right? Like of that next generation.
So, yeah.
And so I kind of thought if you knew the next generation was going to be great, Matthew Mott probably made sense, right? He was going to make sure everything went in the right direction. He's a very thorough person, everything else. But if you actually needed a bit of a reset, Matthew Mott didn't make any sense. The problem is that England were absolutely drinking their own Kool-Aid by that point, and they were convinced they were going to continue to be great. And Matthew Mott maybe is not the right person for this current team. Having said that, I'm still pretty shocked they actually moved him on, right? Because these days everyone is phased out or moved around or whatever. It feels like not the kind of way that they think about cricket recently. Like, did he get one World Cup too few? Is my question, Rob.
I don't know. I think, like I say, I probably wouldn't have given him the job in the first place. He didn't seem to do that much from the outside. And some of those teams that he was picking, and that is definitely his job. He picks the team, right? Obviously, you have the Ben Stokes, I'm going to play the day before the World Cup or whatever, which we all knew was blatantly going to happen.
Yeah.
Then, so that creates a bit of an issue because he must start every game or whatever, every game he wants to. And then it's like, why am I watching Moeen and Livingston in the middle order again when neither of them are in any form? They're both off a cliff. And you're like, well, that's our middle order, so tough. And you're watching this team just underperform because everyone's out of form. And he was like, oh, we were really unlucky because everyone was out of form. That was a known thing, right?
Mm.
Do you remember who scored the most runs for England in the World Cup?
Was it Mark Wood?
It was a guy called Dawid Malan, who averages 56 in ODIs, I think, and a strike rate of 100 or whatever. And he's totally forgotten and hoofed out for whatever reason. I don't get it. Yeah, maybe he could have stayed on, but I don't think he should have been there in the first place. England have quite big problems now.
Can I throw back? Okay, so you've mentioned all the form stuff and that you didn't like him in the first place. England basically don't have any batters who can play spin anymore, right? They've lost that whole wing of players they had that were bringing against spin. All seem to have disappeared, right? That's not Mott's fault.
It's true.
They don't have any bowlers, and they're still relying on Chris Jordan and Moeen Ali to bowl, which no longer in their peaks. Again, not really Mott's fault because there isn't great bowlers coming through. And that whole legacy of having too many players to pick from, and we don't need Alex Hales because he sends weird pictures to people and all sorts of things, and he didn't call us the morning that Ben Stokes was in jail, all that sort of stuff. They're not in that era anymore. If a player was good enough now, and he was caught throwing his best friend's body into a dumpster, they'd still be like, yeah, but maybe we should pick him. Right.
Depends whether you call Ben Stokes or not. Like Ben Stokes is a bad man, but they like him, and Alex Hales is a bad man, but they don't like him. So,
yeah, but different kinds of bad men. But the point being is, right now they would just have to pick the players that are available to them. There's a lot of things that have gone wrong with England cricket of recent times that I don't think is Matthew Mott's fault. Would be my main point. And so when I see a coach fired for what is probably, as you said before, form, age. And as I said, maybe a drop off of a couple of key skills that they really needed. I'm not sure that the coach is the problem there. Having said all that, I also don't think Matthew Mott was the right coach to be coaching a team that was already falling apart.
Yeah, the writing is on the wall right now, isn't it? Because when Adil Rashid isn't available, England don't have any spinners. Let's not kid ourselves here. There's nothing coming through. Rehan's dropped out, kind of, his form's gone. So England don't have any spinners, and we don't have the ability to play spin. That's quite a bad thing in modern cricket.
Yeah. Next World Cup is Sri Lanka, and
right.
Champions Trophy is Pakistan/UAE.
Yeah, allegedly. Yeah.
You might be able to play really and bowl spin there, is all I'm saying, Rob.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of places where being able to play spin and bowl spin is handy, and England don't appear to have done anything at all about that. They're like, well, we've got Rash and he's great, so that's fine. And it's like, yeah, but he's not going to play forever. He won the World Cup in the Caribbean, didn't he, Adil Rashid? He's been around forever. I read Rob Key's book when I was on holiday, and it's really funny. Like not a great read, but some of the bits about coaching were very insightful. So there's a whole chapter about how much he loves Flintoff. So that is a name that he's his best mate, and picking your best mate for stuff is you go down the annals of any industry, and picking your best mate for all the good jobs is absolutely
that's why you're on this podcast.
That could never go wrong. But he basically says he spends chapter after chapter moaning about all the stuff he was made to do when he was a player. Team building, he's like, why? All of this thinking outside the box, and they had titans of industry come in and tell them, and they had the SAS, and they went and picked up dummies on bloody stretchers and walked up mountains with them. And Key was like, I ain't doing that. I just don't see the point. So he has no ideas other than these guys are really good at cricket, so that's fine. We don't need coaching. He's totally anti-coaching. He's like, a coach is the thing with the wheels on that takes you to the game. So Key is really like, come on, lads, everything's going to be fine. You do what you want to do, and there's nothing wrong with a few beers and all this sort of thing. He's an absolute throwback when it comes to it, and he was kind of given the job because, to be fair to Key, he talked quite a lot of sense when he was on Sky, and he seems like a nice fella, and from what I hear, everybody really likes him. But England I was just saying, like, let's all be nice guys. You're good lads. Let's whack it.
Mm.
That ain't going to work. It's not going to hold up when you don't have a spin bowler and you don't really have the pace bowlers. And England are very good at ruining pace bowlers, which we've gone about forever. They've got Jofra Archer, remember. Mark Wood's numbers aren't as good as Mark Wood is, if that makes sense. England, when you go, it looks good on paper, Bairstow, Livingstone, Moeen, but that was 6 years ago now that those three were really good. Yeah, I don't know. Who's going to get the job next? That's the next question.
Okay, so that Marcus Trescothick has got the interim job. From everything I've just quickly read and sent some messages around, it seems like he's not even in the position to get it. So there seems to be about 4 main names, and you've already mentioned one of them is Freddie Flintoff. So obviously Flintoff was on his way to being a media star, and he had his own fish and chip show. He wrestled in Mexico. You know, all the things that head coaches of cricket teams usually do before they start up. And then he got in a massive car accident because he was on a TV show that is made for idiots.
That often has massive car accidents.
That often has massive car accidents. And I don't know Freddie particularly well, but one thing I would say about him is he is someone who completely and utterly throws himself into anything that he wants to do. And I get the feeling over the last 6 to 9 months since he started recovering from his accident, that he really has taken coaching very seriously. However, there's a podcast I saw of a certain Rob Barron talking about the fact that Gautam Gambhir was sort of brought in to head coach without too much, certificates and everything else. It would feel very similar if Flintoff suddenly got the head coaching position, that they just wanted Freddie Flintoff to be the head coach, right?
Yeah, because he's Key's mate. And I'm okay with it. But I think there are so many flaws. It feels like we're kind of at a time in English cricket where it could all come crashing down quite quickly here. They still think that they're the best, England, and they just sort of rocked up in the World Cup and were abominable in the 50-over World Cup. And the 20-over World Cup, you can kind of paper over those cracks because they got to the semis, which is about right for that team. They're about the 4th best in those conditions, and they got panned by India because Bumrah's better than everybody else. And they kind of went, well, that was okay, that's fine. But yeah, they're knackered. I don't know, like Sangakkara would be fun. Has he coached anyone?
Well, he's been coaching Rajasthan, hasn't he, over the last little while. So I suppose he has head coaching experience of recent time. At least that's head coaching experience, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's incredibly bright and knows loads of stuff about cricket. And he went right round the circuit at the end of his career, so he knows the game for sure.
The other one that's come up recently is Mike Hussey. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I saw that name. Yeah, obviously he's done loads of stuff with Chennai, and he's clearly utterly obsessed with cricket. I'd say he's probably more so than us. Like, he really is obsessed with the game. And I would imagine he'd be a really good guy to have around. He could do lots of different stuff with batting and cricket in general. Like, a good brain, nothing wrong with that.
Well, I wonder if he's a head coach.
What's the Flintoff v Stokes ego war going to be like there? What happens there?
Well, surely we just get a documentary following them, and maybe their own podcast series, right? At the end of it, they're on Spotify together, getting $1 million a month to do a podcast series together. Yeah, I think that's fair. The Flintoff and Stokes thing is really interesting. I think Mike Hussey is the other big name that's been mentioned, and my issue with that is that I'm not sure that Mike Hussey is a head coach. I think he's probably an assistant coach. Kumar Sangakkara lives in England and everyone loves him. That, everyone loves him angle in England worked quite well for McCullum for a little while. It's interesting to me that the names are, though, all former player names after Mott, who was a professional coach. Does that mean they're not looking for any other actual coaches?
No, they're not, because Key thinks coaching is completely irrelevant.
So you just need a name.
I think Key thinks that. Yeah. I don't agree with it. I still think that there is room for elite players to be coached. Just a bit. Just people like, have you noticed this? And it's not necessarily going up and saying, your backlift's all wrong or your grip's crap or whatever, but have you considered this, and tweaking things? And I've listened to plenty of interviews where players have said, oh, this guy suggested this to me, and I changed my grip a little bit, and all of a sudden I was miles better. Like Butcher talks about that a lot. And they do need a little bit of guidance. It's not just like some of these guys have been thrown in. You're telling me that Bashir and Hartley don't need coaching, that they're playing for England, and like Bashir doesn't play for his county team. He's playing test matches. You're telling me that he doesn't need a bit of coaching to get better at doing what he's doing. I'm not a massive fan, but where's Graham Swan? Why isn't he telling people how to spin the ball?
Well, here's my question. Is that a head coaching job anymore, though? Or is the head coach, especially in English cricket, just the vibes dude? And
but
then you get the other coaches to do the real
Isn't
job.
that key? Isn't the big name the guy at the top? So Strauss then key.
But McCullum is a vibes guy, right?
Fine. So he's getting the credit for lots of other people's ideas, is what McCullum's doing. But he's a paper over the cracks guy, right? England are excusing poor performance by saying, well, we're playing this way and we're legends, and everyone's going to remember how we play. And my fear as an Englishman is that we're going to enter an era now of the guy in charge doesn't give a monkeys about coaching and wants to employ all his mates. And we're going to actually, with the talent available in English cricket right now, if you don't think about the game well enough, you ain't going to perform you're not going to outperform India and latterly South Africa, even in white ball stuff. England are going to fall down quite a lot if they just go, right, let's have a load of fun, lads, and whack it everywhere. It's great to watch. Don't get me wrong. It is great to watch, but you are there to try and win stuff. And when you're England, Australia, or India, you get all the money. So you should be competing every time. You should be in the semis at least of everything, because you get all the money. It's not a fair fight, is it? It's a massive handicap for everybody else.
I know Australia didn't make the semi-finals and England did, but I still think Australia were the better team in the World Cup, right?
Definitely they were, yeah.
India played better cricket, obviously, and won the tournament, and South Africa almost won the tournament as well. I was watching that World Cup thinking that every other World Cup we've watched since 2016, really, England has been the team that has been innovating and has been ahead of the game. And what I saw in that last World Cup was England just looked stale. And you watched the way that, Head and Warner went after them, and you were like, that's what England used to do. And it's changed a little bit. So my question is, do you need to go out and actually find someone? It's all well and good to find Flintoff, right? If he's your mate. But does Flintoff actually have a theory on how they should play the game differently? Does Sangakkara have a theory on how they should play the game differently? Because if not, I actually think whoever comes in, probably, because the team isn't as good as some of those other good teams, probably isn't going to be all that successful.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that they will be successful if that is the mode. So we spoke about this with India. You can have the funny guy. Everyone loves Flintoff in England. Everyone loves him. Have Flintoff, fine, but not the head coach that's making all these decisions. I quite like what he's doing now. He's kind of around the group, and he is somebody that they definitely all look up to, all the England players, and it seems like a brilliant man to have around because, like you say, he's all in, isn't he, for English cricket? And even if he's just doing fielding drills and stuff at the end of the day, chatting them through how they're going to go with tomorrow, what's tomorrow about? How are you going to approach it? That sort of thing. Having someone like Flintoff around for that is brilliant. And having Anderson, because they won't let him play, having Anderson as essentially the 12th man, which is what England are going to try and do for as long as they can until, Question of Sport gets Anderson on or whatever it is. That's all fine. Have all those guys around. I'm totally for it. Have 15 people about. Why isn't Swan in it? I mean, I know Swan pisses everybody off and he's annoying and everything, but he was really good as a spin bowler. He was really good spin bowler, like the best we've had for 30 years. Why doesn't he sit with Bashir for a bit? And why doesn't he sit with Hartley and which other ones come out of the, spin bowling lottery draw that they do to decide who's going to play for England? They're going to be knackered if they don't have somebody there that thinks about the actual strategy of the game of cricket. Never mind the players, the actual strategy. We were talking about this with Sri Lanka yesterday. Sri Lanka's strategy is completely wrong at the moment. They're going, we need to set the platform every single time and then just whack it at the end. No, they've got no one that can whack it. So what's the point? Why are they 80 for none off 12? What's the point of that? They don't have anybody that can score 50 off 18. They're setting up as if they're the West Indies, which is utterly absurd. So you need someone with a brain, or a couple of people with a brain. It doesn't have to be an analyst, but someone with a cricket brain, can be an ex-player, but someone who's done this coaching stuff where you have to go away and learn about what happens when you're playing on a really crap pitch and how do you assess what a good score is. We've just seen a whole World Cup of that where Sri Lanka themselves bombed out because they couldn't think about what might be a good score batting first on a dog. And England's absolute modus operandi for the last 5 years has been let's just smash the hell out of everything, and we've seen them throw Ashes tests away by sticking to this ludicrous plan. Like the Ashes was the team with no brains against the team with no bollocks, wasn't it? England against Australia, and they leveled each other out at the end of it. If either of them, like if Australia had a bit more balls or if England had any brains, they'd have pissed up in that series. So the brains is the bit that is missing here, and I don't think Flintoff's the answer. I don't, the names that I've seen chucked about today, Hussey strikes me as a guy that's definitely got a really good cricket brain. But who is the tactical and the strategy guy, and who is going to? I do think the big question here though is who manages Stokes, because Stokes is like a spectre over all of this, and he can kind of do whatever he wants. And when you've got a guy that can pick which competitions he plays in, who's to say he doesn't want to play in the Champions Trophy? It's probably not. Probably can't be asked. It's not a big enough tournament for him. But that's a really difficult guy to manage. He's almost Kohli in English cricket. He's that big. He's bigger than the team, isn't he now? He's like, oh, I'll open because, you know, Crawley's got a bad hand or whatever. Don't know who's going to do it.
Okay, so I want to flip to something. We'll quickly answer Abdullah's question. Is he fired, as some are saying, or has he retired? We're just assuming he's being forced out, which means that for the next 3 years, some people will call him fired and some people will say that he stepped down. But Matthew Mott wanted to continue as coach, let's be honest, and he's not continuing as coach. Whether he was pushed out or whether he jumped beforehand, I don't know. But I would assume that he had to leave. That's the other thing I want to ask you about, though. So Lizzie Ammon writes this story that is up on the Times and starts everyone talking, which basically says Matthew Mott is going to leave his role, right? Then about a day and a half later, the CEO, Richard Gould, comes out, Rob, and he says, that the rumors that he's been sacked are not true, right? That was, what? Wait, when was this article go up? I just haven't looked. That was on the 26th of July, right? So that was like late last week that we heard that. Now it's the 30th of July and he's out. The ECB's ability to piss around with every single story, like, why not? Why does Richard Gould have to go on the BBC after that and talk about it? Why doesn't he just say, look, Matthew Mott is still our coach and we are having discussions about the future of the white ball cricket team at the moment. We all would have been like, okay, he's our coach and they're having a discussion. And then at the end of that discussion, they're going to tell us whether they want him or not. To say that the rumors are not true, and then 4 days later for Matthew Mott to not have his job, the ECB again looked like, the England clown board.
That's what they are. And that's what they always have been. And it's Giles Clarke's fault, probably.
Lord Harris.
But it's like Premier League football, isn't it? The second that the board come out and back the manager, he's gone. He's got 6 days maximum. And yeah, England have got into all that now of the vote of confidence is like the worst thing you could ever get if you're in charge of something. I think they're badly run, the ECB. I quite liked what they were doing with the Strauss-Morgan thing. Morgan's the other name we haven't talked about, by the way. He's probably favourite. If he wants it, he'll get it. I think, the ECB is... it's really hard to find the right word without saying F in the middle of the word, isn't it? When you're thinking about what they are. But yeah, it's a cluster something. It's full of morons that don't know that much about cricket. But I thought the Strauss-Morgan axis was set up to get rid of all these fusty old men that were just, turning up for the free piss up and actually think about how the game's going. And for a while, England were bloody brilliant at that, and it wasn't that long ago. 5 years ago, England were the ones doing all of it. And then they did this test match thing, which is the big story that England keep peddling. And it's so that we don't notice that the rest of the game is going to shit, right? So they're going, but Bazball, though. And look how quickly we can score when the other team
We're giving money
up
to Zimbabwe.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't mind Morgan. Like, he knows enough about gambling to realise what makes you a higher percentage chance of winning cricket matches. And he's very, very good at the media game as well, because he's a guy that will, whenever they asked him, if England messed it up in a game, whenever they asked him, was it the players' fault, basically, he always said no. He was like, what was that plan? He goes, well, we did the plan and the plan didn't work. There was an ODI where he did exactly the right thing. England were defending something like 8 off the last over, and he threw the ball to Adil Rashid. That was absolutely the correct move. You create chaos. You up the volatility. And Rashid got spanked and we lost. That was exactly the correct move. And he got panned for it because, you had 2 pace bowlers with overs left. What on earth are you doing? So, well, they were due 11. And Rashid is his range is huge, right? Of what he could go for in that over, bowling random leggies. So I like, and also he doesn't care if someone wants to have a go in the meet. Like the press conference can line up. You can line up anyone you want against Eoin Morgan. You just go, no, that's wrong. I think this. And his brain is clearly brilliant. Maybe it's a bit too early for him, and maybe he needs to go away and learn some stuff.
It's a big job for him. I'm not sure he wants that level of job at the moment. Maybe if he starts losing. Hey, yeah,
he's probably having a lovely time.
If he starts losing commentary gigs and everything else, maybe things change a little bit. But right at the moment, I don't see that happening. I'm just having a look at the end of the BBC article with Richard Gould, by the way. He was asked if any decision was imminent, and he said no. Music and Stuff says, how much role does Butler have in the Mott sacking, assuming he's keeping his job for the foreseeable future? It's possible that Butler's not seeing his job through. It is one of those situations where kind of, I never think this way, because I would look at my overall plan, but the way that sporting teams look at this, one of them was going to go. So this probably saves Butler, right?
Yeah. I don't know how good a captain Butler is because I don't speak to the players, but he never looks like one of those captains that is going to proactively change it up to pull a win out of the fire, which is what I've always wanted, what I've always been screaming out for.
You want Magic Picture dream captain, right? You want MS Dhoni with a leg slip to a quick bowler in a one-day game. You want Kieran Pollard under the helmet for no reason at Silly Point taking a screamer.
Yes, please. I want Dominic Cork to make these crazy unilateral decisions. I want Shane Warne. We all want Shane Warne. But that kind of thinking where you go, right, you lot are thinking wrong here. There's nothing wrong with having a backstop. There's nothing wrong with having, 2 silly mid-offs if that's the right answer. Butler seems very formulaic, very Alistair Cook, and doesn't appear to say all that much, but he's a great player and by all accounts a great guy. So that's fine for, it's kind of captaincy 101, isn't it, in cricket these days? But if this England current batch of players, and I'm not convinced by a lot of the ones coming through and the names that are being thrown around today about what the future of English cricket is, I'm not convinced yet. I would like to see someone with a bit more thinking of the captaincy outside. I'm not using the phrase outside of the box. Definitely not going to say outside of the box again. But that's the kind of captain I want. But I want somebody in the setup who isn't vibes. Just one of them who is there to think about cricket and how we're going to move forward. Because there are times with the players that we've got now, we're not India. You can't throw the ball to Bumrah because I'm going to say it again. The ECB ruined Jofra Archer. They had the best thing ever, and they ruined him. And they could have had what India have got now is India can perform averagely well, throw the ball to Bumrah, win the match. England had one of those who can also bat and has a rocket arm in the field called Jofra Archer. And then they decided to bowl him for 60 overs in a drawn test match against New Zealand.
I don't remember that. You've never mentioned that before.
Anyway, so they killed him. So now they can't win games from nowhere by throwing the ball to somebody or expecting a batsman, because we don't have that guy anymore that's going to get you 60 off 18. We haven't got Klassen in England. We haven't got Sky even. So you're going to have to win games by thinking, and the current setup doesn't give me any confidence that that's going to happen. So let's get some guys in that can do that.
Final question. Who would you make England coach?
Myself. It's the only answer. Me and you will do it.
I'm trying to think of what a Rob Barron run England cricket team would be. I tell you what, it'd be more fun than baseball. I mean, it would be an absolute disaster in every way, but I would enjoy it more than it. It would be, you'd be the Shahid Afridi of coaches. You'd be like Shahid Afridi if he did a line of Coke before he went out to play.
But that's Ben Stokes' music. It'd be really fun. I think, we should probably get an associate side that's got no money. Like, we should be in charge of Gibraltar or something, and let's see how far we can get them by doing crazy stuff. Who should be the England coach right now?
I think you think it should be Eoin Morgan.
I think Morgan's one cycle away from being the ideal candidate. I think giving it to Hussey with Flintoff knocking around for fun, I'm all right with that. What do you reckon?
Music and Stuff has mentioned Ricky Ponting with his losing his IPL job recently. This is the problem. We are going to have every single name come out, and I personally can't wait for Tom Moody to apply, and see how we go. But that's it.
What about
for
Peter
Cricket8.
Moores?
Hey,
What about Peter Moores?
Did he?
Give him a go.
Do you think he had enough goes? You know, don't you think now? I mean, he's probably a better coach now than he ever was when he coached England, by the way. Which is something else. That's it for the Cricket8 podcast. You have been listening to the dulcet tones of Roberto Barron. I am Jarrod Kimber, and we will see you again very, very soon for more Cricket8 sort of stuff, but less emergencies.